So for today, we are going to continue working on our news site. This is 4 of 5, so we have one more left tomorrow. And today we're going to be working with promises and asynchronous code. And we're going to be using Axios to make API calls to the Hacker News website or the Hacker News API. And then we're going to integrate that new data into our website. So what is it called? Yeah, so previously we've been just consuming our data through a JSON, which it's just static data. Also, the data is not really real. So now, hopefully by the end of today, we will actually have Hacker News articles that we're able to consume. Exciting stuff. But before that, we are going to look at some asynchronous code. So we've heard the word asynchronous. What can someone tell me what that is? Or what does it mean to have something running asynchronously?
The general term itself should mean like at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it means. When you have two pieces of code running asynchronously, that means that they're running independently of each other and they're running pretty much at the same time. So we've seen this with a few things. So here I just created a JavaScript folder, a file, and I'm just going to be running some examples here. We don't need to touch React yet. So we've seen this method. So set timeout. Set timeout is one of the asynchronous methods that we will see and probably will use pretty often. Even if we don't use it too often with our new website, you're definitely going to see it when you're developing. So the first argument takes a function, and then the second one takes a number, and that number is however many seconds, milliseconds you want it to take. So this will run the function after this many milliseconds. So let's say we do a console log of something. And let's give it 5 seconds. And then if we do set timeout, I didn't just copy it. So there we go. So if we do this, what do you guys think will happen here?
It's gonna wait 6,000 milliseconds before console logging.
Okay, so let's see what will happen here. Let's just do node. I think I'm in the wrong directory. Okay, so wait 5 seconds, and we
Pop
should
up
see
1 second apart.
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, so this is running asynchronously. It will happen immediately when, like, the timer starts immediately when this code gets executed, but it will wait for this amount of seconds. And if we do a different console log here, let's see what we get. So we get other first because this timeout is waiting, also this one. So even if we put this down here after the second timeout, we will get other first because it will execute immediately. Any questions about this?
Yeah, I was trying to implement this on my own at some point. It kind of threw me off because I expected it to be, I didn't expect all of the set timeouts to like light their fuse at the same time.
Mhm.
So it's kind of surprising to find out how that worked.
Mhm. Yeah, the set timeout gets called as a regular instruction. It's just the wait. So you would have to have a set timeout inside of a set timeout if you wanted to chain them based on the timeout. Yeah.
So what would be
But
a
you could
use
probably
case for
wait.
this?
So this one, if you want to, let me think. If you click on something and, oh, actually, so you're on a page and a user is logged in. You could do a set timeout that will log the user out after a certain amount of time. So that's where it could come in handy. There are other examples. I can't think of any right now, but yeah, does that make sense? Okay. So another
Yes,
one.
it does.
Oh, sorry. Okay, awesome. Let me see if we can do. No, await has to be, so I think you can use, forgot if these term promises. Probably not, no,
Not currently.
okay,
We would
Set
have to.
timeout's too old school.
okay, cool, thank you. Okay, so set timeout, and then our second one that we will see is set interval. And similar syntax, it'll do something. So the first parameter is a function, and the second parameter is an interval. So if whatever number I put here, this will run this every 5 seconds. So if we see that, oh, I shouldn't have done the wait. Okay, let me stop this. Oops. Let's stop this and just do this last one. There we go. Okay, yeah. So it's gonna wait 5 seconds and then show another one. But yeah, so that's what the set interval does. Any questions? This is pretty basic. So yeah, I don't know why I'm deleting these. So set timer and then set interval. There we go. Okay. So we've mentioned promises before when we were talking about API calls. So when we do an Axios call, we receive a promise. Does anyone remember what a promise is?
Isn't it like, sorry, isn't it like telling the front end that like they don't have it ready now, but you're supposed to expect a response. So like this is what you should do whenever you do receive this response.
Yes, in a way, yeah. So a promise is a JavaScript construct, and it specifies a future value. So when you make an API call, so let's say Axios .get whatever URL you're doing, something, this will return a promise. And we'll see how to get that promise in a bit, but what this function will do is return a promise, and if you wait for that promise, there's two different ways to do that. That promise will resolve into an actual object or a value that you can use, and that is your response. So before we actually see how it's working in Axios, let's try to create a promise. So the way you can actually just create a promise in JavaScript. I just want to show you the way it looks and pretty much what it looks like under the hood. So it has two functions. One is on success, and the other is on failure. And this then maps to something that we want to do. So inside the promise is a function, and this function has two parameters. On success is a function, and on failure is also a function. And it takes in a string of what you want to what you want to send in as your response. Actually, it takes more than just a string. It could take even an object to return. So that will be inside your promise when you receive it. So if we created this promise and say we want a timeout in here. So set timeout. I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to do it for, I'll just do 2 seconds so we don't wait too much. And okay. So we can set this promise to a certain value, and that will, we won't be able to access that until the promise has returned. So we can say promise equals new promise. And let's say this. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so it waited 2 seconds and then it printed out the promise. Actually, no, that was the console log. Let me do a console log of the promise itself. See what happens. Okay. So here the promise is pending because I didn't wait for the 2 seconds, which is actually pretty cool. So if I said, so actually, let's put this inside of a function. So let hello equals okay. So let's put our promise in here. And we're actually not going to say this is a this is promise. I'm just going to return it because it's a function and I want to just call the function. So, okay. So hello will return a promise and I will be able to receive that promise. Right. So what is something that might happen here? Or why is this still happening here? Why is it saying that the promise is pending, that we don't have a value? Yeah, Jake.
Sorry, I don't know why I raised my hand. I was thinking maybe because there's like a console log, because you're calling the function like on line 16 inside the console, and then on line 11 you also have a console log. Would that be it or no?
So this console log is printing out hello.
Okay.
So this inside one, and then this one is printing out the promise. So maybe this one will make it a little more clearer. So if I say promise equals hello, and then I just do promise here. So I want to print out the promise. And this will
Oh,
give me
okay.
this, yeah, so this will give me the same thing.
What if you just did like hello, with parentheses?
Here,
Like just called the function without console.
so this is the promise, and this is, I want to see what the return is. I want to see
Oh.
what the promise holds, because I'm returning a new promise. So calling this hello function is equivalent to calling an API, to doing the Axios call, because it's returning a promise. So if you guys remember from the Django part, what do we usually do after we call Axios to do anything afterwards?
Then.
Mhm.
So I have a question though. What's the difference between the promise with the capital P and the promise with the lowercase p?
This one is just a name that I gave it. So
Can
I
we
could
give it a
call
less
P.
confusing name?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm getting really confused trying to follow between those two.
Yeah, I wanted to call it promise because it is returning a promise. So I wanted to have that be the name.
Okay.
So I
Can we call it like promise return or something? It's just confusing looking at both of those.
let's do that. Promise, return promise. Yeah. And then we print out the return promise. So here, so here we were assigning a variable to it, but it doesn't really work like that because we have a promise and we haven't returned anything yet, or we haven't waited for it to resolve because it was still within the 2 seconds. So the way that we do it is, we can't do this. So we do hello. This returns a promise. So we chain the dot then afterwards. And this dot then has a response. And this response is piped into a function. So this is our variable, and this is what we can do with the response that comes back from this. And here we can just do a console log of the response itself. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So now it's waiting, and then it didn't log a response. Trying to see if I did.
Zainab, you're not resolving a value from the
From here.
set timeout. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
console logging, but we need to resolve something.
I forgot to do that. Okay, so in here inside the timeout, instead of doing a console log, I'm actually going to resolve, like Raphael was saying. So to resolve, you have to use one of these functions. So it's either a success or it's a failure. And let's say this one was a success. So we say on success, and then we send in what we wanted to send in. And now we should be able to see that. Trying to check my syntax. No, this looks correct. So I'm returning a new promise. And calling hello dot then.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Did we see? Did it wait for 2 seconds before printing hello when we run it?
Mhm.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I
oh,
also.
so
I
we
need-
did, oh, sorry, I forgot. We took away this console log. So it is printing out the response. Our response was the hello. So I'm just gonna hello resolved. And now it should print out hello resolved. Awesome, okay. Yeah, I figured it out. Questions? This might be a little confusing when first looking at it. So we don't really have to worry about creating promises, but I wanted to demonstrate how we consume them. And I know we've seen it before with the dot then, but just kind of understanding that a promise is pretty much just something that returns something on success and something on failure. And that allows you to grab data, and sometimes you have to wait. So you have to do a dot then, or in our other syntax, we will have to do an async await, which we've heard about a lot. Actually, before we move on to the async await, do you guys have any questions with this?
Louise had a good question in the chat. I actually wanted to take a stab at it because I always get a little confused on this, and I misled people in the chat a little bit. I think Louise was asking, is the on success a built-in function?
Mhm.
And my understanding is that on success is the whatever function we put in the dot then of our promise is the function that is called for on success.
It's kind of like in
Yeah.
map, when you can say map element index.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's a role taken by that spot, but you can call it whatever you want.
yeah, so I just changed the name and it still worked. It still did the same thing.
Zainab, when you
And
did the first example with just console log of
Mhm.
hello, was that not working like the same way that this is working?
Yes, because it was not actually resolving our promise. So it wasn't returning what we were supposed to return, because you have to use one of these to resolve the promise. So a promise is going to stay pending until you resolve it. Pretty
Would you
much.
mind just showing like the console log of it again so
Mhm.
I can just see the difference?
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
if I said, instead of this, it was console log. And I'm just gonna say, like inside promise. So it's getting inside promise, but it's never going to this one. It's never going into the dot then, because the promise does not resolve to something. And to be able to do that, to go into that dot then, we would have to actually send in or actually return a resolution. So either success or failure.
Yeah, kind of like how React manages actually deciding when to render something to the screen. Like a promise sort of manages when to execute the code in the dot then or the on success or on failure. And like you were saying, Zainab, because we weren't calling on success inside the promise, we were never executing that callback function in the dot then.
Mhm. Yeah.
So could you, so I just want to clarify when you have console log there, that's,
Mhm.
could you maybe add a console log on line 17 that says in the dot then, so that I can just kind of see that it's not actually, because when I see response, I'm like, oh, that is the same thing as what's happening on line 11.
Mhm.
But I guess you're saying unless you have the on success thing, it's not actually going in there.
Mhm. Yeah, let's see that.
Is that right?
Yeah, let's check it out. Yeah, see, it never goes into here. Because we never resolve, that means it never goes into the dot then. So dot then takes the resolution of the promise and then it puts it in here into this response.
So what if you had on success console log and promise?
Console log, sorry,
So what if it was on success
Uh-huh.
console log and promise? How would that change it?
I don't know what behavior that would give actually. Let's see. Okay. So prints, so this is in promise, it prints it, and then it goes in then, and then it prints undefined because console.log probably returns undefined. Because inside of it, it's probably just printing in the functionality of the log, and it doesn't actually return anything. Or maybe it returns undefined.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, Jake?
Just looking at the the terminal, like we wouldn't be able to tell the difference like between like the two examples we've been talking about, but there is a difference like in the actual like inner workings of the code, right?
What do you mean there's no difference in
Well,
what?
it seemed like when we were like on line 11, instead of on success, hello, like when you had console.log hello or something like that.
Yeah,
It seemed like if you were to run that code and we didn't know what was in your like text editor and we were only looking at the console, then like
Yeah.
if
If we
between the
didn't-
two like examples that you were showing us,
Mhm.
it seemed like there wasn't any difference.
Yeah, if we were expecting this response to be hello and we were just printing it out here, we wouldn't be able to, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand this. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so on line 16, the response is taking in the value of what is in on success on line 11. Is that correct?
On line 16, you said?
Yeah, so response is equal, takes the value hello, which from line 11. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. Mhm. Any other questions? Okay, so what if we have to say hello, and then we want to say after that, how are you? So in here, I'll just say, how are you? And I'm gonna bring it down to 1 second. I feel like 2 seconds is way too much. And
Yeah.
then I want to say, how are you doing?
Hey Zainab,
Yeah,
for your console log response down there in that bottom hello. Can you
Which
give
one?
that that last console log response? Can you give that a little prefix in your console log? Like a little string, final response, comma, and then the response?
yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm just curious to see if that undefined is actually represented by that response.
Oh, I think, yeah, I won't give that anymore because I changed.
Hello. Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay, okay.
I changed it
I
back to
see.
hello. Yeah.
That's okay.
We can play around with that later.
Yeah, no worries.
I do want to get to the React stuff, yeah. All right, so how are you? How are you doing? Okay, so what if we want to do this, basically? We want to chain all of these. So we would have to say dot then, and then again dot then. Actually, so we would have to put, let's do this. So I'm gonna make a function called Conversation or greetings. And this greetings is going to do hello. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Hello, then I want to call, how are you? And oops. Then how are you doing? And then we can do goodbye. Oops. I'm going to change this back to 1. And let's actually do on failure. Should we, or no, let's just keep it on. So actually, Raphael, a question. If we do on failure, does that return regardless? So if we don't have anything other than on failure, or will it only if something goes wrong, it'll return whatever's in the on failure?
I'm sorry, can you show me?
So if I had an on failure here instead of on success.
Yeah, so then the promise would reject, and then you'd have to write a dot catch in order to handle it.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Okay. Perfect. So here, and then I would say dot catch. And that's it. So actually,
Well, do you catch by or not?
no, we would catch. I don't know when it would. Because I would want to do a different one and then say if it goes into the dot catch, then I could send in. This is getting a little long, but okay. So then I'm gonna say on failure. No response. Then here, I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna send a promise here, because my bye, I just wanna print goodbye. So console log. Bye. Okay. And here, hello. How are you as a function? And we can send in the response from here. That's what there we go. And then same thing for down here. And yeah, then catch. I think this is the right way to do it. I might be wrong, but we'll see what it does. So I want to say hello, how are you? How are you doing? And then Oh, it's not printing anything, I forgot. So how are you?
And I think you need to comment out that last bit of code too, right?
Which one?
Lines
Here?
44 through, yeah.
Yeah. What was I doing? I'm gonna send in the response here. And here. So actually, this is going to be an error. And then I'm gonna do just a console log for the response that I'm getting in. So for here, it's gonna be an error because this is our error catcher. For here, these are all gonna take in our response. Let's call it something different, actually. Let's call it, what should we call it? Results. Results. And just one more thing. Okay. I don't need it in here. All right, so what this code is gonna do is call hello and then take whatever resulted from hello and send it into how are you. So how are you is going to print hello and then it will return. And then it will keep chaining like that. So whatever is returned from how are you will go into how are you doing. And then whatever goes into how are you doing, let's just say I don't want to send anything in the how are you doing. And in here I could have said if result is empty, then on failure, no response. Okay, so now we're just simulating that. And so if it goes into the on failure, then it will have to go into the dot catch, and the dot catch will call our by function. But I forgot to actually grab the error like this. Okay. So let's see what this does. Oh, I'm not calling the greetings function. So. Hello, how are you? And then let's see what happened. There was no response. So maybe I should print out no response here. I'll make this daily basis so I can actually add another line. Do a console log. Results. And then nothing. So we're just checking to see that the result was nothing in here. And so if there was no response, going into the failure and then here, but it's not actually printing
Is,
by.
where are we using the no response promise?
The no response is, oh, yes. Thank you. There's
Definitely.
another dot then, yeah.
That is the best kind of error in my book.
Yeah, just forgetting one thing.
Yeah, said it's easy to fix.
Definitely. Perfect, okay. There we go. So we weren't actually getting the no response. Okay. So now it should say, hello, how are you? Nothing. No response, bye. How, is it making sense? Or do you guys have any questions? Yeah, Jake?
Where is it, like, how does it know which route to go, like either on success or on failure? Is it only because like in set timeout, you have on failure? Like if, yeah, where you're highlighted, if that was on success, like, would it go on the success route?
So
You know?
let's say if results equals empty string, then I'm gonna do
Yeah,
this
Yeah, that was my question too, because
and then else.
is it because it was an empty string, it was considered a failure? Like, is an empty string automatically considered a failure?
we get to decide. And I'm sorry to jump in. I'm just getting
No, no,
excited.
please do, yeah.
This is, so instead of set timeout, imagine that we're doing like Axios.get, or imagine even better that we're writing our own Axios library. And what we're doing is we're looking at the HTTP response. And if it's an error code, then we call on failure. But if it's a success code, and we have maybe the data that we expect in the JSON body of the HTTP response, we call on success. Is that perspective helpful at all?
Well, so with the way it was set up I think it was Jacob that had said something. With the way it was set up, if that had just said on success instead of on failure, it would have done the exact same thing because we didn't have any conditionals set up, right? It was just only allowed to do one path. Is that right?
I believe so. When we construct a promise like this, we define when it calls on success or on failure. So if we're calling on success, it'll do on success, and we were just calling on failure before, and that's just what it was doing. I think that's what you and Jacob were saying, if I'm understanding.
Yeah, that helps clear things up. Another question is set timeout. Is that a promise?
No, we were just saying that it doesn't return a promise. So this is the promise. We wrapped it and we wrapped a promise around it. And that's how we were able to return the promise.
Yeah, we pass the promise a function. That function is going to always take two arguments, because that's part of like how promises work, an on success function and an on failure function. And those get passed in later. And what the promise does is kind of connect the dots of when it connects the dots between the dot then and when we call on success. And like what we do with this promise is we wrap asynchronous code, and we're using a set timeout to simulate some kind of asynchronous event, the most common of which is like an HTTP request. Not sure if that was helpful or a little bit of overload.
So would you not set up a dot catch for each one of these? Because I
So I
know
was just-
we did it.
Yeah, I was
down.
just about to say, yeah. So one thing before I touch on that, because that's the next thing I was going to mention. You could actually, in the dot then, you can delete all of this. And it will know to send in the response. So in how are you, we're expecting something here. So it'll automatically send in whatever it has to this function. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing is,
Not get rid of all of them. Can you just comment it out?
sure. Should I leave like one of them?
Some
out?
of them.
Yeah. Here, I'll leave two of them. Okay. So if I wanted to say, how are you? And I wanted to have a specific error catcher, I could do this, comma, bye. So that's my error handler. And if I just put a comma, that's gonna take on failure. It'll go over there. And on success, it'll go over here. So let me test it out without this dot catch. So I'm not gonna. Sorry, gonna comment it out. And so in here, I'm actually gonna remove this because I don't want to mess with the syntax without it. So no response or bye. And in theory, this should give us the same behavior. It did not. So it does, I think it might have been an old version then. It's not working anymore. Oh,
What
right.
was the expected behavior again?
That it would just take the error and handle it.
Oh,
So
I
here,
see, with
yeah.
the dot then.
Mhm. But okay, scratch that.
Yeah, I'll
So,
look at the docs, because I know what you're talking about, and
yeah,
I'm not sure either. It may have,
may have
or-
changed, or I don't know.
yeah,
Skylar,
Yeah.
that you have a comma in line 52, maybe that's interfering because it's expecting a catch.
Oh, this. Okay, let's have this back in here then. Thank you. I didn't notice that. No, it's still giving uncaught exception error. So it's asking for a dot catch. Okay, let's scratch that. This is one way of doing it. So you can have your hello and then chain all of your dot thens.
it might not like, I wonder if it's because we have the other dot thens where we don't pass the, like, I wonder if we would have to pass the rejection function.
Oh,
for
to
each
every
dot
single
then.
one.
I'm not sure. I'm just kind of guessing based on looking at examples in the docs.
That would make sense.
Yeah, without
That
the
would make
function call
sense.
though, on
Yeah.
by.
Okay, yes. And how, I don't know how to do the syntax here, so I'm gonna do this real quick and then I'll comment it back.
Yeah, I think you can, yep, exactly.
And then bye. And I'll comment this out.
No, sorry, that was the last idea
That's
I
okay.
had. For what it's worth, I think doing a dot catch is good practice anyway, because it's explicit. And it just makes things a little more flexible.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. This we've seen before. We've seen the dot then, dot catch, all of this. We've also heard of the async await one. So that is an alternative to this syntax, and it allows you to not chain them like this. So I'll show an example. So this one, dot then chaining, and then I'll give an example of async await.
Is it up?
Uh-huh.
Can I jump in here with
Yeah, please do.
something?
Yeah.
Kind of want to take a moment to encapsulate everything we're doing here.
Okay.
It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like this is one of those kind of recapping what's happening behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Because from what I understand, we won't be writing promises or doing what we see here,
Correct.
because this will be built into .get, Axios.get, and our
Mhm.
await functions.
Yes.
So everything that we just saw is just understanding how it works behind our Axios.get,
So you
and
won't be
not something that we
sending,
will be implementing.
you will not be implementing the actual promises, but you will be
Right.
implementing this.
Right, thens and catches,
So-
which makes sense because that's part of the await function.
Exactly. exactly.
right? So you call your async function, you do a try catch, and then you call your await function that calls another
Mhm.
Axios.get kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
that's it.
Throw in that for front-end focused roles, being able to explain promises is something that could very well be asked in the interview process.
Definitely. Okay, so we had this example of the greetings function. Now I'm going to give an example of a way of doing it with the async await functions or syntax. So to start off, anytime you want to use await, so the way this works is you can await a promise. So you do await and hello, because hello is going to send back a promise. But to be able to put await in here, it has to be encapsulated in an async function. So you have to put async up here and then await your function that you're waiting for. So if we wanted to simulate this, we can say let results equals await hello. So this allows us to actually take the promise that was sent out up here and put it into a variable. So this gives us a little more flexibility than having to chain the dot thens one right after the other. And what this will do is it will wait until the hello has resolved, and it will put the results in results. And then we can do the same with the next one. So results equals await. What was my next one? How are you? And then how are you is taking in a result. So we will send that in. Same here. Results equals await. How are you doing? And this will send in the results. And then we can return. Actually, we can return. How are you doing? Because that was the last of it. No, the no response. I'll just call it final response because it makes more sense to me. Here, I'm just gonna rename it. Just naming convention wise, and then we want to return our final response. Final response, and this will take our results. No, the final result does send out. Okay. I was gonna say that you can return, like we can have another function that says, like thank you or something like that, and then have that as a return. But let's see what this one will do. Okay, so you notice that we don't have. I'm gonna say await for this one because it is returning a promise. All right, so here we don't have a dot catch. How do we catch the error? We will encapsulate this block here with a try catch. So we want to try this. Okay, and then catch. Oh, I hate it. And what are we catching? We are catching our error. And then we'll just call by, so we can return whatever by returns. Which it doesn't really return anything, it just calls it with the error. But yeah, okay. So does this make sense? I know we haven't run it yet, but any questions about it first? Okay, I'm gonna run. Hello, how are you? No response. Bye. So the no response error is being called from in here, because that's what I called it. On failure, I sent an error called no response error. Okay, what do you guys think? What thoughts? Confusion? It all makes sense? Yes.
I would say I was a bit confused because what I was kind of expecting was when you were reassigning the value of results in 65 and 66, I hadn't, because I don't think you have a console log in your hello and how are you functions. I think that's just.
I
what
do.
it's-
Or not in the hello, but I have in the how are you. And how are you is taking whatever was in the hello. So
Oh,
yeah. So it's always chaining the response, because that's, if you're using asynchronous functions, you would want stuff to run at the same time. But in this case, our next function is dependent on the previous function result. So that's why you would want to do this or the dot thens. That's yeah. So it's built in that it's supposed to take in whatever was resulting from the previous. So let's say you're making 2 API calls, and the first one gets you IDs of objects or items, and your second API call is going to be an API call to get the first item's information. So you have to wait for the first one to be able to do the second one. And that's why you want to chain it. And this is pretty similar to what you would be doing, is taking the result and then sending it into your next thing.
okay.
Yeah, Jake?
In your try block, if like the online 64, if that was an error, would it like, it wouldn't do anything else below 64? It would just like go to the error.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, but it's throwing the error because of on line 67, we have like final response, and that
Okay.
has some sort of error.
Yeah, let's throw the error on the first one. So instead of on success, I'm just going to say on failure.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. And if I run, it just says hello bye, because it sent in hello to the failure, and that was our quote unquote error, because that's what our error message should be. And so in bye, it printed out hello, and then it printed out bye.
Okay, cool. I have one other question. That on 62, the way that we like define this function with async, is async like, should we think of that as something that only goes with shoot, what is this called? Like asynchronous, or I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. With promises or await?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Promises.
Yeah. So we want, yes. So when you have something that returns a promise and you want to run it asynchronously from your other program or your other stuff, you would want to put it in an async. So this here, the hello, is what is it called? Is returning a promise, and then we're chaining the dot thens because there's more promises that we're expecting. And same here, these are returning promises, so we're still expecting promises, and we have to be inside the async function to await these. So let's say I printed something here. So after greetings call, this is going to print before anything else prints, because this function is running asynchronously from the rest of our code. So if we show that, there we go. So the way our code is running, it technically starts running from 74, because this is our first actual like call. These are all functions that were predefined, right? So down here, this runs and then this runs. But since this is this has like the timeouts, it's taking more time. This is going to run first because that went off and is running asynchronously somewhere else, and the rest of your program is running. And the benefit of this is you go to a website, you want to refresh your data in the background. You don't want the functionality to ever stop for your user. But if we didn't have it asynchronously, it would have to stop because your program is using its resources for the API call versus, I don't even know if you can run it synchronously with apps, because Axios is an asynchronous, I think even fetch, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and even more so JavaScript. Is asynchronous in that when it calls a function, it will, this is a little in the weeds, but when JavaScript calls a function, it like puts it on a call stack and then can continue execution. So I'm not like, yeah, it's hard to write blocking code in JavaScript, which is both good and bad.
Yeah. Any other questions about this? If there's no more questions, let's take a little break. Maybe come back in 5 minutes. Is that okay? Or should we do 10? 10. Let's do 10.
Let's do 10, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll come back at 10:05 and we'll start working with React or something 05, wherever, depending on where you live. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. Okay. So now that we're back, we are gonna integrate an AP, the Hacker News API into our existing news site. So I'm gonna close this. And what's with this? I'm gonna just look at my app.js and I'm gonna start my server. And okay. See what I get here. Okay. So 2 tiny things that I changed. I added this Code Platoon logo and the title over here. You can see it in the app now. I also moved the search into its own component. So before we had it in our homepage, I moved it out of there and I made it its own component. That way it's not overcrowding the search place. And also Logan, thank you for your suggestion about, so when you're searching, and if you go back before, it wasn't actually removing the searches if it goes back to a blank. So now it checks if it is blank, then it just sets the results equal to an empty list, and that way we get rid of our search results. Any questions before we get started? No? Okay. The first thing we want to do is we want to install Axios. So I'm going to add a new terminal here real quick, and I'm going to do npm install Axios. Awesome. Okay. So that's all for that. We, like I said, are going to consume an API. So I'd like us to create a folder in our source folder called API. And then in here, we're creating just one file. And we're going to call it articles API. .jsx. Okay. So we want, so let's look at this real quick. So a few things that or a few places where we consume the articles is when we display all the articles, and then we have a section specific article search, and then we also have our search. So we were able to put a certain word and then search by article title. And we want to implement that same functionality. So let's create three functions. So our first one is going to be called fetch article by ID. So article by ID. I didn't demonstrate that back here because I forgot. But when you click, you get an article by ID. So we want that functionality as well. So that equals function. And inside the parameters, we're just going to call it article ID. That is what we're pulling in. And for now, we're not going to put anything in there. We're just scaffolding this out. Same, we're going to do another function and we're going to call it fetch articles by section. And this is going to take in a section. And third, fetch articles. Okay. All right. And for fetch articles, we want to fetch all the articles, right, in our app, but we also should have the functionality of fetching articles that have a specific filter, because we have that search functionality. So let's just call filters equals null. So filters is the name of the variable, and equals null makes it optional. So you can call fetch articles without filters. And that way we know in here, if it's null, then we just fetch all the articles. But if we have specific filters, then we'll add that to our API query. All right. And similar to what we've seen before, when we want to export a component, we can also export these functions. So export default and then curly braces will allow you to actually put all of these in here. So I could just actually start typing fetch articles by section, and then also fetch articles. Okay, so then we can actually import them later on.
You might have to remove the default. I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think the default should work. Let me try importing here. Import. So here I would have to put it in curly braces because it's not the only thing in there. And let's say, what was it called? Fetch articles was one of them. Yeah, it might not. I forgot where I put it. API, articles API. Seems like.
Yeah, I'm not 100%, but I think that's the case
Mhm.
with the brackets.
Okay, I'm gonna see if this actually does anything. Yeah, this is just quick debugging. Let's see this. Did not do anything. Yeah, Jake.
Sorry about that then.
Zainab,
no,
I
you're fine.
may have missed it. Are we creating our API? Or are we like getting this project set up to like receive data?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Are we like creating our own API for
No.
this site, or are we like getting it set up to?
Yeah, we're consuming it.
Okay,
Yeah, so we're taking it from something else that was already written. And so it's the Hacker News API. Yeah, I think the default thing was correct. Like taking it out. Oh, it's because I put the log. I just put the log in the wrong one. That's all. Yeah, this does it. Or this should do it. Yeah, here you go. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. I think because I think it's because the curly bracket notation with export in JavaScript is
Mhm.
like a way of doing multiple named exports. Like alternatively, we could write that like export fetch articles ID on one line and then export the other thing on another line. I think, I'm not sure to be honest.
Mhm. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Okay, I guess I can import all of them. But so yeah, I went back to my app.js and I'm gonna import all three of these. And yeah, so right now I'm just gonna play around inside my app.js because this is where I had instantiated the articles to begin with from the JSON folder. So it'll make it a little easier to see the results immediately. And then we can kind of move the data around. Any questions? Are you guys caught up? I didn't really do much, but yeah, so this part I did. Yeah. Okay.
can I see your import statement? Yeah.
Right, this one.
Okay, it's just from .api.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for this, we're going to be able to see our async await call, which is what we're going to be using for this. So let's create a function. Actually, I'm going to send over the Hacker News API documentation link. I just put it in the chat here. So if you want to go to that, this gives so this is not the official Hacker News API. The official one kind of sucks. So we're using this other one by hn.algolia, and yeah, they have a better API, easier to use. So they give us a few examples here. So this one, you can call this to get items and you can specify an ID. You can get users, and then you can do a regular search. So you have a search and you can have a query, which pretty much whatever you send in that query, it matches by the words. So if I sent in like phone, it should give me the articles that are related to the word phone. So this will be useful in our search function one. You could also have it sorted by date. So if you have search by date, and then you can have whatever query parameters in, or whatever parameters you want in there. So these are mainly the parameters that we're going to use. There's a few more that help us out, but here, so the query is just text. Here you have different tags. So if you want a story, you have to specify tags story. There you can also get comments, polls, poll options, show. I think this is so show Hacker News. These are specific to the Hacker News website. I'm gonna also give you guys this link, because at the end of the day, this is what we are recreating. So we want to be able to have these links at the top and whatever we can get from the API. So we can get all of these. We can get the show, we can get the ask, even the front page. So yeah, these will help. There's also some filters. So created at I, you can send a numeric filter with, so if you wanted to say, I want everything before yesterday afternoon. So you would say numeric filters is your key, and then your value is created at I is less than whatever the time is that you want to have before. So I think we've seen, I'll explain this later, but actually I'll do it now. So we've seen the date.now before. This function gives you the date right now, but it's in milliseconds elapsed since January 1st, 1970. So this is kind of how it follows it, but it's not in milliseconds, it's in seconds. So I'll show you like a conversion thing later. Also, you can specify the page because it only gives you a certain amount of articles per page. They actually call them hits. So they only show a certain amount of hits per page. You can also change that. And there's a few examples down here too. So before we actually construct our API query, let's construct our functionality, or like what is going to call this API. So I want to create an async function. I'm back in my app.js, and I would want this to be inside my function, inside my component. That would help. Okay, so here I have my state. I'm just gonna put something in here. So let's do async function get data. And in here, we're gonna define a variable. Oh, I have my autosave on, 1 sec. Okay. So I'm gonna call this variable JSON response. And what this is going to get is our API call. So I can do Axios.get, and I will fill in the information in here. I could also put Axios in its own little defined function. So I can say function API or API. Capital C. And I can just put the Axios call in here, actually. So there's a few ways of doing this. And here we'll call API. What am I missing here? So when I do the call, this API call is going to return a promise. So I'm going to return this. What should I put over here? What am I missing?
You need to pass the parameter.
Yes, I will be passing the parameter for sure.
Oh,
Actually, I don't need to pass a parameter
Dot
to this.
then,
you need to wait.
Oh, wait. Yeah, because I used async. So I can do await, and then we're awaiting the response from this call, this get call. And for this get call, I'm just gonna do, let me put this in the chat. Copy. So that's gonna be what goes in our API call, in our API URL, like in the place of where our URL should go. So axios.get, and then this URL. And from the documentation that we saw, this will search by date. So it'll give you the most recent ones, and the tags equals story. So I want to just bring back stories. Yeah, Alicia?
Couple of questions. One, can you copy and paste that in the chat so that we can grab that as well?
This?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's what I put in the chat.
Oh, you already did?
Yeah. I mean, I put the link itself, but
Oh, I see it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I thought
the
that was
URL.
Adam's thing and I didn't. Okay, sorry about that.
Mhm.
The second thing is, can you explain why we're doing the two different functions here?
we don't have to. I was just saying that you could. Here,
So these are the same.
yep. So I can just do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had was, the idea here is that instead of grabbing our articles from this news.json, we're going to be doing an API call to get articles that match whatever we specify.
Yeah, or we
Okay.
can just get articles in general. Because right now, these articles are kind of nonsensical, or maybe they might, I'm pretty sure they're in a different language actually. But
Okay,
I shouldn't have said that. But I mean, like, yeah, because it has English in here, but then the titles are different. So
Right.
it might be in a different language.
So, and then could you also just explain, like, as we continue, why you're putting it on a certain page? Like, why is this on the app.jsx rather than breaking it out into
So-
its own and that sort of
So
thing?
eventually we'll break them out, but for now, because I have defined my article, I had defined my articles in here, and all of my components are taking in the articles. I'm just going to replace this stuff. I'm going to replace the news data from the JSON with my API call response. And that's just for ease of seeing results kind of immediately. Because everything is all hooked up. If I just send the articles correctly, it will give me the results that I want to show based on the data that that this returns.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? John, did you have a question? Or I was trying to see from the chat.
That was in response to what Adam had.
Oh,
told.
okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, so this will return a response when it's resolved. So we should probably put this in a try. Okay. So we want to try to do this, and let's just do a simple console log and see what we get. Okay. I forgot to put the
It's a
catch.
capital the API as well.
Sorry.
Where your const JSON response equals await call API. When you define your function, API is all capitalized.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I forgot to add a catch. So this catch is gonna grab our error, and then we can just print out our error. So console.error. And we can say error occurred fetching data. And then we can print out the error next to it. Okay. Does this make sense? Yeah. Okay, so our get data, we're not actually calling it from anywhere yet. So from what we've seen at, I guess yesterday, what tool could we use to load our data when our component mounts? So when we first open our app, we want to probably load this data because all of our other components use it. So yes, so it's use effect. I don't think I have it imported in here, so I'm just going to add it to
I
the
just want to
top.
ask, isn't that the default behavior anyways?
What is the
That when it's mounted, it'll call it.
Yes. Actually, it depends where you put it, but you should have it in a use effect. You shouldn't have it just kind of lying around, because every time the component re-renders, it's going to get called if it's not in the use effect.
Okay.
Yeah. So use effect. Let's see if I'll remember the syntax. I know the second one is square brackets. The first one is a function. Okay, and all we want to do is call the get data function. Okay, so the reason why we didn't just put this stuff inside of use effect and we had it in its own function is because if you want to use the await, you have to have an async function and you can't make use effect async. You could create the async function inside of use effect. So I can define it here and then call get data. This will work. Or you can have it up here. But yeah, you can't just put the regular functionality in the use effect without having a wrapper of an async function around it. Dalton, yeah.
Would you mind like bringing your font size up a little? It's kind of,
Sure.
you went to like the
Oh my
light mode
God.
side and it's kind of hard to see when I'm like split screening it.
Yeah, let's use our, what was it, this one? Okay, I'm just gonna change my theme, whatever you guys, do you guys like this one? This is kind of easier to see. I know Adam uses it. Or do you
Yeah,
like
you
the
can,
dark? Yeah,
yeah, the theme is fine. It's just the font size itself.
okay, there you go. Yeah, the dark one hurts my eyes sometimes. So that's why I went back to the lighter one. Okay.
Yeah, studies show dark text on a light background is easier to read.
Yeah. I feel like that is very true because I feel like that. Okay. Anyways, okay, so now if I go here, let's test out if it works. Fetching data, Axios not defined. Okay, that's probably one of, let me close this. Sorry about that. It's one of the most important parts is we have to actually import it. So I'm just gonna import it down here. Import, I think I have to put it into this. No, I don't think it needs the brackets or the curly braces. So it's just Axios from Axios. Okay, let's check. Yay, okay, so we see here we got some data back. I'm just gonna make this a little bigger so we can look at what data we got. So in our response, we have all of these different things that are related to the API request. We have some config stuff we don't really need to worry about. Most of the stuff, I mean, not most, the stuff that we are expecting to get back is going to be in our data. So in here, we get a few pieces of information. Hits are going to be the actual articles or the stories that we are looking for. So this is what we're consuming. Dalton, you're saying you're not seeing a console log? Do you mean like here or?
Yeah, like mine's not, I have everything you have, but it's not console logging it.
Did you do this?
Yes.
And then did you call the, here, I'm gonna actually remove this from here. You just called the get data from in here, right? Use effect?
Oh, I didn't, sorry, I didn't put the use effect. I didn't see that.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so yeah, these are the stories that we get back. And if we look at each one, we have an author, we have created at, there's comment text. So this is what I was talking about, created at I. So this is going to be the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. And Alicia, your error might be that you didn't put your functions inside your function app, like your app component.
Oh, I didn't see it was inside there. Thanks.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is the story ID. This is going to be something that we're going to use. Also the title and the URL. Some stories don't have a URL, they have story text. So we'll have to handle that later on. But okay, so this is our data. We have hits per page. So we can actually change this. Right now, they're only giving us 20 stories per API call. So we can bump it up. And it also tells us how many pages there are. And NB hits. I think this is supposed to be all of the hits, but this doesn't really make sense because 20 times 50 is not 2 million. No, that's not 2 million. Yeah, it is 2 billion something. So yeah, the documentation doesn't really say it correctly, but yeah, here it says the number of results on a page. Sorry, the number of results and page number are available as variables, NB pages and hits per page, which I think they said respectively, but I think that's incorrect. So yeah, the documentation is a little wonky, but anyways, I'm just gonna probably, oh, this is Axios documentation that I'll send a link to later. But okay, so now we have a general idea of what our data looks like when we get it back. Any questions about this? And here we see there's something called params. This is what we're going to send our stuff into. So we can have everything in the text of our URL. So we can have all of our parameters like we've seen over here appended. I myself prefer using this other syntax, which when you're doing a lot of different types of parameters, it's much more easy to read. So I'm back at my app.js, and in my API call function, so call API, at the end of my Axios.get, I'm going to put some curly braces and I'm hitting enter. And in here, I'm going to say params, colon, and open some curly braces. So in the parameters, I'm going to send in an object, and this object is going to hold whatever my parameters are. So I can actually take away the tags equals story from here. And I can just define it in here. So I can say tags, and that's supposed to be a colon, and then story in a string. So if I run this again, so I saved, I'm gonna refresh real quick. I should be still getting data. Awesome, so I'm still getting data here. Perfect. Okay, so if I add something else, or I mean, I can add something else. So with the tags specifically, there's a few of them that do this. You can actually send in multiple. So if I want anything involving a story or a poll, let's say, so any tags that include this, I want to retrieve it. So let's see what our data comes back as. So these are all polls, as you can see. We're not getting many questions because probably I'm only getting 20 hits. So that should probably be something that I change right now. Am I going too fast? Are you guys good?
Was it tags comma story or story comma something story?
So tags, colon, and then you put
Oh.
your points, yeah, your tags in here, names. So back to the documentation, I just want to see which one gives me, okay, so hits per page. So the way I can use this is the same, similar to tags. So I put a comma here, and then I'm gonna say, was it a capital H? Shouldn't be, okay. So hits per page. And I want to say, I don't know, let's do 50 right now. I think 50 is a good respectable number. And if we go back to our code, it should be giving us 50 right now. Perfect. So now our hits per page are 50. Is it, anyone have questions about this?
Can you go back to the code?
Mm-hmm. Are we good? Yes. All right.
Yeah, this is like a canonical example of making AJAX requests with React.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're getting our, oh, so the console logging twice. If you guys remember, I mentioned it yesterday. Does anyone remember what I had said?
Is
Yeah.
because of React strict mode?
Exactly. So if I go back and I comment that out, or I remove it fully, we shouldn't be seeing it twice again anymore. Okay, there we go. So it's only there once. And if I go here and here, yeah, it's just once. Okay. I'm gonna keep the strict mode though.
How would you pass the search by date in as a parameter if it, or can you, if it doesn't fall under one of these parameters?
Yeah, I was just gonna show you. So search by date, this is, I guess the name is a little misleading, but this pretty much gives you the results in chronological order from the latest to the oldest. They also have, let me look at this real quick. So you can search by date. You can also just search regular, and this is sorted by relevance, then points, then number of comments. So it's your choice, whichever I guess it depends what you're trying to achieve. But yeah, so this part, it does this. If I want to filter it by the date, so I only want something after a certain time, it's going to be inside here, numeric filters. So that's going to be our key. We're going to call it numeric filters. And it accepts a string, and the string is going to say created at I. So that's the one that we want to reference right now. So we can do the same with points or number of comments, and we can use one of these conditionals. So I want this to be less than, yes, no. Yes, less than. I want it to be older than whatever date I input here. So I'm going to create a date up here. And let's just say, so constant date equals, so I'm going to do math.floor because I'm going to do something divided by 1,000 because, yeah, anyways, this will give me a rounding of the number pretty much. I don't want any comma, any decimals. So what was it was date. So this is built into JavaScript. So date.now gives you, like I said, the milliseconds that have elapsed since 1970. And this one, so the created at, this is based on seconds and this is milliseconds. So I'm gonna do divided by 1,000. And then let's say I want it to be 24 hours ago. I have looked this up previously and it's 86,400 seconds for 24 hours ago, because this is now seconds and then I take this away as 24 hours. And okay, so now I have my date and I can just put date here. This just concatenates the date to your string, so I don't do the backtick thing. Hopefully it'll work. I'm not sure if I might need to put it in the backtick thing. We'll find out. Okay, so we got a response. And so before I should have checked, but we were seeing the dates that were that like some of the articles were from today. So here we're seeing the 22nd, but we're not seeing anything new. Oh, it's only showing polls. Let me see. Let me just show stories for now. Okay, so here all of our stories are 25th. What's today? Today is 26th. So since it's in chronological order, it's giving us from the beginning. And so if I remove that, this, we see stuff from today. Does that make sense? Or any questions or comments? No? Everything, yeah, okay, cool. Everything makes sense. All right. Okay, so we have these functions that we created. So we should probably put the API call, like the actual API call in the other function. So let's do that. I'm gonna grab everything inside call API. So I'm gonna grab that, I'm gonna put it into, I'm gonna go into my articles API, and I'm just gonna copy it into one of these, and we'll play around with them and make them work to what the functionality is supposed to do.
Why are you moving it?
Because we are gonna fetch specific ones. Actually, I should have, here, I forgot to show how we can actually use this data. Okay, so here we have our articles, right? Our articles we were previously getting from our news data, news.json. We are gonna get rid of this. So we don't want this anymore. We are gonna create a similar state. So I'm gonna use the same name. But I'm just gonna send in null for now. I don't want to initialize it to anything. And yeah, so I just created state called articles, and I'm using the state with the initial value of null. So in our get data function, this is where we have access to our JSON response. We can set articles equal to whatever the data is. I'm going to need to look back at this. So the JSON response gives us, it's going to be JSON response.data.hits, and that is our array of articles. So if I go back here, it's going to be, I can remove this console log for now. It's going to actually, just in case we need to reference it again, I'm going to send in JSON response dot data dot hits. If I'm still correct, okay, yeah, data hits. And let's see if our website functions, because our articles, I mean, some things might, the names might mismatch, but let's see what it does. Okay, we're getting some errors. Null map. Let me check this first. Okay, actually before this, I'm just gonna I'm thinking. So we're setting our articles. We should probably see what this returns first.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Article list, it shouldn't have gone to the article list. Oh, I think because we set it to null and not an empty set or an empty
I don't
list.
think don't you have to console log line 50 now to get that error to go away?
Which one?
Isn't, oh, I thought line 50 was what was causing that error, is it not?
No, it's because I set this state to null, because before I was actually bringing in articles.
Good catch, saying
Yeah,
that.
because it was saying here that it couldn't read property of null with map, and it's saying that it's trying to access the article, like access it in article list, and that shouldn't have been called until after all of this worked.
Yeah, I think
The first
it's the
rendering,
first
yeah.
render, yeah, before the stuff in our use effect happens.
Yeah.
So it's just that default data in use state. And then, and it was expecting, the article list component was expecting an array.
Yeah, and I do have a suspicion that this React.strict mode is what caused it, or what caught it.
It-
Because it renders everything first, and then unless it just would have caught it regardless.
I think use effect might wait until the first render of the component, but I'm not 100% on that.
Look at this, guys. Isn't this cool? We got
That's cool.
articles.
So what else did you do besides taking null out? When I took null out, it didn't work.
I put square brackets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I initialized it to an empty list, and then and the other components will at least recognize it as a list, even if it's empty.
Nice, cool.
So I was confused because I assumed we would have to change a lot of stuff because our the properties on these articles are not the same as the properties on our old articles. So when we're passing in,
Yeah, there are things that we do need to change, because here you see the date went away.
yeah,
Yeah, so there's a few things, even when I click on the article page, it doesn't know that ID, and also the name of the ID is different than what we had before. So we are gonna do some like retrofitting to make it show on all of our components. And that's what we're gonna do next.
Just kind of a coincidence that the old data source and the new data source both have a property called title.
Yep, we got lucky with that one, yeah. But yeah, there's no sections, nothing is hooked up fully yet. But yeah, we were able to at least see the titles. Any questions? Oh, the search works. Nice. No questions?
Could we just see the code again for a second?
Uh-huh. Which code part? Here?
I missed one part of the call API there.
Here we go. Okay, so what do you guys think we should do? Should we grab our article data as it is and send that into our components, or should we predefine it like this? Like, should we define the titles of our different databases, our keys?
what was the other option?
We can take the article data as it is, and then we can use the correct naming inside the components. So we'll yeah. I would go with the second one. Yeah. Well, anyways, that's for after break. So we're gonna take a break and come back at 11:05. Sounds good?
Can you push this?
Yeah, I'll do that real quick.
Thank you.
And Zainab, I'm still a little bit caught up on, it seems like we have two functions, is like the return or call API and the get data. Is there, because you initially said they were the same, but they're not the same.
So they're not the same, but we can put it's the same as putting, like, I can put this information inside my side of this. So
it would be,
if I wanted, I can put this entire thing inside my think function. And it would just call the API. Or if I didn't want to do this extra piece, I can just do the Axios call on this line and not use the call API thing.
So const JSON response equals await Axios.get.
So let me make this look a little simpler. So this is one way of doing it. I could have just grabbed this stuff and put it over here.
Okay.
So this might make more sense.
Is there a benefit? And I'm not saying either way is. This isn't me asking you to do it this way. I'm just trying to understand, like, why are you separating it? Is there some benefit that you're getting doing it like that?
Not necessarily. I guess if this API call is getting called from, like, maybe we're calling the same and like entry point, we're calling the same URL, but we want to do different things with the data. We could probably have it be called from a different get data.
Okay.
And have like do something different with it afterwards.
Okay.
But yeah, either or works. It's just, I guess this added another function.
If you leave your get data the same, then you'll have that part that's always the same, and then you can just change your call API or something, or never mind. Okay.
I think so, but yeah. So yeah, so this will replace this. I can delete this and then here, I'll comment this out.
Do however you want to do it. I just want to make sure I understand. So,
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah. This is cleaner and a little more concise.
Okay, thanks, Zainab.
Would you mind making your font size just a little bit bigger? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Here we go.
Okay, thank you.
Let me get rid of that. Is this fine here?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just so I'm split screening VS Code and Zoom, so like the font size is like super
Yes.
small. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So if we hadn't used the use effect, and we just, called the function right now, at this point, would it make any difference, or would it just not work, or? Because we called get data.
It'll call it every time it re-renders. So if there's an update or something and it renders again, it's gonna call that API call again.
Okay, but there would be no update right now, right? Like there wouldn't be an update to the app.jsx component, because the only thing we're ever doing is just getting articles. Is that correct? Or like, is get data also happening when we put stuff into the search element?
I think so. I'm actually not so sure. But I do know that you shouldn't put it outside of a use effect.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll look into it a little more and see if I have a better answer for you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you display lines 30 through 50 by any chance? Or is that's too much of a squeeze? Sorry, from 46 down, if possible. Thank you, appreciate it.
And code is pushed for whoever needs it. So during the break, we were kind of talking about the need for the call API function, and you can use it if you want to have this function call, like the same exact Axios call, but want to do something else with the function, with the data maybe. So you can have this abstracted into its own function, and then you can call it like we were before. We used to have here call API, but instead you could also just put this code inside your get data, because this will call it. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We want to let's first make our website work again. Does anyone have any questions before we continue or start? Or is everyone kind of caught up to this at least at this point? Yes. Okay. So let's start with our home page. So I'm gonna hit Command and click on it, and it takes me to the actual page. Or I think Control and click on it on Windows. So here we're just taking articles. We're sending in the articles to our search and our article list. So our search articles, this seems fine. It's filtering by title, and that's why our search was working, because our title was already it already exists there. So everything's fine here except for article ID. Article.id. Let's see what it's called here. Oh, I stopped my server. That's why all of this. Hold on. Did I get an error? Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. Okay. It's just this. Okay, there we go. So this is our data. Let me look back on. Okay, so it's called object ID here. And I'm gonna change that real quick in my code. So I'm in my search function or my search component. So here, instead of ID, I'm just gonna say object ID. And I think it was capital ID. Yeah, okay. So here, this object ID, we won't see it on the screen, but this will actually give it a correct key. Okay, so everything else looks fine in this function here. I don't think I missed anything. I'm gonna close my search. I'm gonna go back to the home page. The next component I want to check on is article list. So article list uses article ID. So this one is also object ID. And handle title click, we're actually not using anymore. I'm just going to delete it because there's no use for it in here. I'm going to go into article teaser now. So here I'm expecting ID, title, and created date. And actually, if we go back to the list, we remember that we are using the spread operation. So it's just expecting those names to be there. So in here, I'm going to call this one object ID, and we have title, and then created at, what was it? Yeah, created at. And then I'm going to just need to change these real quick. So down here on line 18, I'm going to change it to created at. On 14, I'm going to change ID to object ID. +1, and then title is still the same, so we don't need to change anything there. Am I moving too quickly? Or is this fine? Okay. If I am, just pause me, let me know. Okay, so this looks good. Article teaser is done. Article list is also done. We're closing that. Homepage is now complete. So I'm gonna close this. Next, I'm gonna do article page. So article page takes in the articles. So this is not quite gonna work right now because our ID is going to like, the list is going to be relative to however much we grab from the API. So this, it's not, the ID is not going to match. So we need to fix that in the implementation. But for now, let's say, so this is supposed to be the ID that we get from the URL. If you guys remember, article page, we click on the link in the article teaser and it takes us to another page. And in the URL, we specify that article ID, which we had already changed over in the article teaser component folder, a file here. So here, I'm assuming we would need to do our API call, right? Because our articles are not, we can't just use our articles as they are right now, because we don't have the specific article. So fetch article by ID is going to be our function name, because that's the one, this is just code that I copied in before. This is not functional at the moment to exactly what we need it here. But yeah, so fetch article by ID is what we're going to import. So I'm back in my article page. I'm going to import fetch article by ID from, I think it was no. Yeah, there we go. API and articles API. So here, instead of making a constant, we can make a state in here that holds our article. We could also just keep it like this, but it's probably better to have a state. So let's do import use state from React. And then we're gonna create a state here. So constant article set article use state, and I'm gonna initialize this to null for now, because we're expecting it to be an object. So this I will comment out because it's not correct anymore. And so here we would use a use effect because we want, when our article page renders, then we want to grab our article. So I'm going to also import use effect from React. So use effect.
Why didn't we need a use effect before?
We did. We had it in a use effect to get the data, to call the get data.
No, I meant before we did the API stuff. Why didn't we need a use effect on this page?
Just because we were grabbing the article when it first renders. So this is kind of what Lewis was mentioning. Like if we have something over here and we're just setting it equal to a parameter like what we had here, it's gonna just get called once on render, and then if it updates or anything like that, but it was only being called once because the component only rendered once. But yeah, it's better to, you should have your API call inside use effect. And maybe Raphael or Adam could kind of give input on like industry standards. I think it's supposed to be an industry standard.
With which part?
Um,
With use effect?
using API or calling APIs from the use effect, or at least calling a function that calls an API from use effect.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Again, React is actually doing the work of figuring out when to render HTML and update the DOM. And in order to do that, it needs to know when things change. And use effect is how we tell React that this component is doing something that's bringing in new data that's going to change, that could change the component, that could change component state, or something else. Like, because when an article page, if we're making an API call here, that's not going to change its prompts, most likely. Or it's not guaranteed to. So, and use effect, it's short for side effect when we're talking about functions, which is kind of a term for something that happens outside of like the inputs to the function and the output. Like the props are kind of the input here. It also, again, use effect waits until a component renders for the first time. And if our component is using data that we're fetching with some API call, and it's rendering that data, well, we need to wait, I think, for that first render so that stuff is properly mounted. I'm not sure I'm doing the best job explaining it, but that's kind of like a rough version. And there might be some other things with the React component lifecycle where use effect is important. Again, it's really about like controlling the sequence of events. Like, how does React know that we now have new data? And how does React know if it has to check that it has to re-render something? And also because React is like deciding when to re-render the component, there could be other things going on. Like if a prop value changes, for example, and what if a prop value changes right around the same time that our API call returns? How do we figure out like when to render the component and with what data? And React kind of handles all of that for us. But in order to do that, it needs to know that like this thing is a side effect. It's an API call. It's asynchronous. And so that's why we use effect as well, so that React can like handle tracking, like when does a component state change? When does a component's prop change? When does a use effect happen? All of which are things that could potentially cause a re-render. And then React is actually doing the work of figuring out when to re-render. And it can do some smart stuff with like batching as well to make that more efficient. And that might be getting into the weeds a bit. So I hope that made some sense. And I'm sorry if I was a little all over the place in describing that.
Thank you, Adam. Any other questions? So actually, this is perfect because here with the article page, if the article changes, so if our parameter changes, we are going to want to fetch a different article. So here inside of our use effect, this is where I would call my fetch article by ID. And in the square brackets, I want to track it by article ID. So if the ID changes, we would also change the article because yeah, we're grabbing the new stuff. Yeah, Dalton.
So does use effect have to be an error function?
No.
I think we can define the function outside and then put it here, right?
I am honestly just a little curious. It seems like you write functions like like you'll just randomly make an arrow function, or then you might randomly make a constant. Is there any purpose of, do you even realize you do that, I guess, or is there like actual reason that you maybe want to do that in certain situations?
I usually do arrow functions inside other function, like the use effect here. I'm just gonna use an arrow function here. With constants, if I'm defining it on its own, I would put in a constant. And that would allow me to it just creates a function, and then I can use it for like if there was an on-click something, I would create constant. I don't know if there's a big difference, honestly. There might be, but I'm not sure.
There's not a big difference. It's really just style and convention. Like for use effect, I believe we do have to pass a function as an argument. And once you get used to arrow functions, writing it this way is pretty readable because all of your logic is in one spot. We could, write a constant and set it equal to that arrow function and pass that constant into the use effect and do it the same way. You'll see this style a lot when you're looking at React code, where people are defining arrow functions in line, like where we're passing it as an argument to another function or something like that.
But so was it so did yesterday, would we have put fetch article ID essentially where the second case of parentheses are, and then you would have just had your article ID be the second parameter? Does that make sense?
Oh, you might be muted, Zainab.
Thank you. So yeah, for use effect, the first parameter is this function, and then the second parameter is a list of strings. I don't think I got your question. I don't think that answered your question.
I think it's fine. I can probably figure it out on my own. Just curious. Thank you.
What was it exactly, or?
Well, it's just so I'm trying to think how we did it, because when I tried to write the use effect, it just wasn't working because I just wasn't used to writing it as an arrow function. But so I was just kind of trying to see how we wrote it yesterday, and I guess I think I understand how you do it.
Okay, yeah, I think we wrote it in two different ways yesterday. I don't know, I don't remember, but yeah, we'll talk about it after.
Thank you.
Okay, so this fetch article by ID should return our article. So we need to actually set the article to that. So let's do set article. And we're going to send in whatever comes back from fetch article by ID. Okay. So everyone good to this point? This looks fine. Okay. So we need to implement this, but before we do, I'm just going to go into article real quick and double check that I have the correct namings of things. So I need image, byline, created, and abstract. I'm pretty sure we don't have most of these. We have title, story text, URL, and created app. Let's stick to those. So, and author. Okay. So instead of byline, I'm going to do author. Just find a new place. Okay, so instead of byline, author, and this one just replaces all the instances. Instead of image, I don't think there's an image here. Yeah, we don't have an image, so I'm gonna comment this part out. Actually, it wouldn't really cause an issue because it's saying if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then just say image not found. So this would still be functional. Okay, so we have title, author, created date, it's going to be created at. Okay, and the abstract is just story text. Yeah, so we have story text and story URL. Actually, no, I think just URL, because some of them don't have story text, but they have the URL that you can reroute to. So this would be a cool thing to show. So here is story text. So that was instead of the abstract. And then I'm gonna also take in our URL. I think it was lowercase, right? Yeah, cool. Okay, so in here, I'm gonna close this and just make this smaller. So here for story text, because we don't always have it, I'm just gonna add the check to see if it exists. So let's do.
When you take in the parameter in the function, can you just set it equal to like an empty string as a default?
Here? Wait, where?
At the top, like when you wrote it up here in the article, like in the actual function parameters that you're taking
Here?
in. Would you be able to just set story text equal to an empty string? That way, if it comes in empty, it has a default. Does it work that way?
It's already empty. It exists, but it's empty. So
Oh, okay.
here, yeah, it's set to null.
But null is
Null is different than empty, yeah.
different than empty.
Yeah.
empty string.
Let's do that. What am I doing? Okay, empty string. So this won't work anymore. I mean, yeah, empty string will also.
I mean, at that point, you just put story text down there, and if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's just a nothing, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to show. I mean.
You don't want to
yeah.
show that P block. I see.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I just like not putting unused components, like unnecessary extra components in the body of something.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I do wanna, if there's no story text, that means we have a URL, and this is actually why I did this. So I'm gonna do a link. Do you guys remember links? I think yeah. So link from React Router DOM. It auto imported for me, and I can do. I think it was 2. And this is actually for the actual router. I don't know, does link actually link to an outside source? I'm just gonna do an anchor tag. Href. So href is going to be whatever URL value is. Curly braces. Okay. Can you guys remind me, is there anything else other than the href? Or probably the actual. No, I just want to reroute it. I don't want an actual tag. I should just do link. Trying to think which one is what.
Is this for a link to something like to take us outside our app?
Yeah, yeah. To reroute
I think that's an href.
href.
Couldn't you just do window location.href? Wouldn't that work as well?
We don't need to because we want to show the user a link that they can click on. And so we can just take advantage of the browser's default behavior.
Oh, I wanted to just reroute automatically to the. Oh no, actually, this is correct. You're right, because we are displaying stuff, so we might as well just put the URL here. Okay. Yeah, I kind of got confused with what functionality I wanted to show. Okay, so this, and then I can just say link. Link to story.
Nice.
Okay, cool. So article, it looks pretty done. We have all the correct usages. Image doesn't exist here. But it's okay. I'm just going to keep it empty right now because I'm not using it. Okay, so article, the last thing here, I'm back to the article page, is to just implement my fetch article by ID. So I'm going to my articles API. And here is my my fetch articles by ID function. So can I just, yeah, I'm gonna put async, it has to be like async function. There we go. So I'm transforming this to an async function. That way I can put my Axios call inside. And I'm gonna delete this equal sign. And this will then, yeah, so it'll take our article ID, and I'm gonna uncomment this and try to do some stuff. So it'll take our article ID and should return an article. So I'm gonna delete the date because I don't really need it for this functionality. Same here. Okay, so we want to get a story. Let's actually look at the API real quick. What do we want to get? Common stories of, this is just oh, an author's name if we wanted to look for that. Last stories, URL matching, stories matching. There is a good stories by ID somewhere here. So you can do items by ID, and that should return whatever item has that ID. We could also do in the tags, you can have story ID here. So I'm going to choose to do this one. So tags equals and then story underscore whatever ID I want to put in there. So let's test this out. Tags. This is going to be, let me just remove this.
And if we wanted to just do ID, what would the key be for that? Is it just ID?
Where was it? Up here. Yeah, we would, so we would append the ID to the actual the URL. I think we can actually put it in the parameters. It's not a parameter, so we can't put it in the parameter itself. We would have to send in something else. Here.
That right there, that line that you were just looking at.
Which one? Here?
No, on the website, the hacker API. That very first, see the right there?
Yeah.
Is that not?
It is, but I don't think it falls under the names parameter, so it might be just ID. I think it is just ID. So here I would say ID equals, let's actually test this out right now. So this is going to be article ID. And I think this looks good. That looks better. Let's see what happens. So we're supposed to be able to click on one of our links and then, so this is our article. Didn't give us any data. Okay, so there's no export default. I
Let
think,
me just,
is
sorry,
it,
go ahead.
no, is it the way I'm grabbing it from here? Wait, where is it? On the article page. Do I have to put it in? I think I have to put in the curly braces.
Correct. Yeah, if it's not a default, it needs the curly braces.
Okay, so this is our main page. Click on that. Axios is not defined. Okay, that would help.
Wait, what needs the curly braces?
Our import, when we're importing our function here from the articles API, we have to put a curly brace around it because we're exporting it in a batch. So all these functions are being exported at the same time from the same file. So before, when we would have just like our component in here and we would do export default, that means we're only sending one. And so when we import, we don't have to put the curly braces around it. It'll look like this. So import article. But yeah, because we have multiple ones, it's going to be like this.
Okay, and do you have to import Axios from the article page or from the articles API page?
It's the articles API. Yeah, I went to the wrong one. So up here, we're going to import, it's just Axios again.
Yeah, I think so.
Axios. Okay, and let's hope this actually does something. So to test this out, I'm actually going to put a print statement here in the article page. So I'm going to, let's say, my response equals this. Oops. And then I'm going to set this to response. I'm just going to look back to the article page. Okay, this is just returning this. So if we remember from our app, we have to do response.data.hits to get the response or the actual story. So data.hits. So that's what we're setting the article to be. And we're also going to do a console log of that to see what we get back. Okay, I think that's it. Let's go back to here. Okay. Had an error. Response is not defined in the article page. Oh, I need to just put like let or something. Oh, sorry, I'm moving too fast. Okay, it's just because it's almost lunchtime. Okay, so in my article page, I'm gonna make it just one smaller. It's so okay. I wish there was like a half step between them. But yeah, so in my article page, all I did was put a use effect. And in this use effect, I'm calling my fetch article by ID function that's in my articles API. And then I'm taking that response and I am just logging it to get the story or the article. And then I'm going to set article equal to that. And then this article is going to be sent into this article component. Back to the articles API. I transformed this one into an async function, which you're going to want to do the same for these ones. And this is going to, actually, I forgot to put my await. So I'm going to await my Axios call and then return the response that comes back from it. And this response goes back into my article page as response over here. Is that good so far? Questions? Okay. Now let's see what we get here. Okay, so we're still getting our responses. If I click on this, we're getting errors. Cannot read properties of undefined. We should probably just log the actual response first before doing this.
It just says object promise if you do that.
Oh, does it? Did you do the await here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you're
let's-
welcome to try it, but
Let's check it, see what happens. Yeah, promise pending.
So you're not in the API, are you calling the right endpoint? I think you're calling search by date, right?
I might be.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think you have to call
I
another
am.
endpoint.
Thank you. Let's see. /items. Actually, yeah, because we did give the ID. Okay. So copy. I'm just going to copy this part. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. And okay. Now we can test it out. That's not. Let's see.
We might not want the trailing slash in the API call. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
That's that.
And we could always look in the network tab to confirm to see like what URL it's trying to.
Yeah. Okay, I need to go back to where. Just gonna uncomment this for now. I want to see. I mean, the response is not coming back, I think. Trying to check if I'm doing anything wrong. So I'm calling which article by ID. This one, oops. This one is supposed to be my async function. I do await, Axios. Yeah, so the promise is still pending. It says rejected.
It might be good to look at the network tab.
Network, yeah.
When you call the API initially, are you loading those into a state as an array, those objects?
Which ones?
Originally, when you load the page and you get those 50 articles to populate your page, are you loading them into a state constant? Are you saving them or are you just displaying them?
No, I'm saving them. I have set articles here.
So articles is your list of articles.
Mhm.
So in your when you're clicking on an article
Oh,
link,
am I
why are you calling
taking
the
it
API again
into?
instead of?
I am, yeah. Wait, no, so article here, I'm setting this as a new state. This is a singular article, just one.
Oh,
Yeah, so this articles is not being used anymore. Yeah.
because you're calling it from the API based on the ID.
Mhm.
Why not just pull it from your list based on the ID?
Because I might not have it. I'm not pulling everything from the API. It's only giving me for like 50 records.
Right, but the link that
Oh,
you
but I would
have
have
is
it. I
associated
would
with
have
the
it
link
there.
with
Yeah.
the article you have, right?
Yeah. But we should get it working from the actual API.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure I
Um,
wasn't like going crazy or something.
No, you can. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, I'm gonna try the other one where I'm using the story ID because it might be you have to specifically use the story ID when you're using a story. So let's I think I can just do a regular search. I'm not mistaken. This, and then, what was it? Tags. Story underscore article ID. And hopefully this returns something.
I think, oh, that's cool. I was gonna say, I'm not sure if we need the question mark at the end of the URL, but if it's not hurting anything, then.
This is not returning the correct one though. Story ID. Yeah, it's a different story ID. So let me see our call real quick. Yeah, I think it's something, I'm doing something wrong with the actual promise and grabbing that. Async function. Because how was I doing it here? I have an async function that's getting the data, that's called get data. And then I'm calling that from my use effect. Oh, so I'm returning, okay, I forgot. Anything coming back from an async function is a promise.
Yeah, do we want the function call? Oh, we do want the function call.
Yeah. So here I just did the function call and then, but I should be able to return something.
Do we need to be using await with the get data function when we call it on line 68?
And here, right? No, here. No, because the await is up here.
Oh, thank you. I apologize.
Yeah. No, that's what I did over here. So I have function and then I have await. Okay, let me do some, I'm gonna call this response. And then what did I do here again? Yeah, I'm just gonna console log it, see what I get. Okay. And here I'm just calling that function. Not gonna set it to anything right now. I'm just gonna do this. So if I do this again, I forgot to define response. Okay, merge response.
So I was wondering, is there something wrong with us doing? Does this, well, I was wondering about the error that we're getting with the access control thing.
Which one?
Where it says it's been blocked by course policy, no access control, allow origin.
Are you getting that or am I getting that?
Well, I thought we were both getting it.
Where's mine?
You know, I think Terrence ran into that earlier. And I think the issue there was part of the query, like the AJAX request to the server was malformed. And then the server was getting weird. So that might be, I don't know if, you know, you're seeing that for the same reasons, Alicia, but yeah, I would, that might be a separate issue.
I was muted. I'm getting a response back now, which is good. But I'm not getting any hits back. So something wrong with the way I'm trying to access the API or trying to get the data. Did I have the question mark here? Yeah. Maybe I, because that's how this one worked. So API,
What's your value for date?
there is no value. So search by date is just, what is it called here?
Well, so what request are you sending then? Because you added the date parameter
No, that was before.
in the call.
Oh,
no?
in here.
Yeah, the numeric
Ah.
filters.
This was, oh, but I don't need to remove this. So this one, this date was specific for created at, like for the numeric filters. It has nothing to do with the search by date. Search by date is their way of saying that this is sorted by date, most recent first, and then if you have a regular search, sorted by relevance.
Not my favorite API pattern.
Yeah, because this one was working. This is currently working. It's this other call that's giving issues.
It might be worth looking at the network tab to see exactly what the shape of the HTTP request that we're making is, to confirm that we're sending what we are expecting to send to the API.
Let's see.
And
Let me refresh this real quick. I'm actually going to go back to the main page and grabbing this. Okay.
So you might want to filter the network tab to show only XHR requests. So that's the little button in the top left, fetch/XHR.
Okay, so I saw the issue. It's because I'm not doing the string properly for this one. Yeah, that was wrong.
Can you
It
show
shouldn't
how
have
you
been.
found that issue again? Like what you
Uh-huh.
did?
So I looked at the request here. So this is the tail end of my URL. So search $tags equals. And I was supposed to send in story underscore the number, like the ID. But I had forgotten that I put curly braces around it. So it made it an object. And yeah, we don't like that. So now let's hope that it works. Okay. Still nothing. Let me go back to my homepage, and because these keep updating too. So okay, that won't fix it. Let me check my request. Okay, so this ID is there.
is it supposed to make a new HTTP request when you click on that article link?
I think I figured it out. Do you guys remember when we first did this and we were routing, or we were doing our routing, and how we added a 1 to make it restful because it started with a 0? I think that's our issue here. Let's go back to, where did we set that in the article teaser? Yep, it's still +1. So let's delete that +1 real quick. And I hope this one fixes it.
What page was that on?
It was the article teaser, where we're sending the link to, yeah.
And then do we have to get, there was one place we've -1, right?
Yeah, that one isn't, we're not doing the -1 anymore because it was over here. I didn't even think about it like when I uncommented this. So back in the article page, that's where we were using the -1 to access the array.
All right.
Yeah. So now if I click on this, hopefully it'll return something. No. Yay, we got something. Okay, we got a hit. We got one object.
Nice. Awesome.
Yay.
Can you copy and paste the API call code?
Yeah, one sec. So articles API, this one. So the let response, yeah.
Is that the only place you call the API, right? Don't do it anywhere else?
Yeah, this is where I call actual, like, I do the Axios API call, and then I call this function from article page. So the reason why this stuff is not showing up in here is because I haven't set my state to the new article yet, because I was debugging a few things. So let's go back and do that. Back to my article page. I have, okay, so fetch by article ID. Actually, I'm going back to my articles API because I have my response, and I'm going to return that response. I didn't want to. Okay. So response. This is something for later because time has run out. But this should be in a try catch, just for, yeah. We need to do that or add that. Okay, so I'm back to my article page. I should be getting my response from here. And then I need to set my article to response.data.hits, and hits is a still a list, so I will access the first element at 0. And this should set my article, and then my article should show up. So we go back. I'm gonna go back to my first page so we can see it. Click on this. And I didn't define my response again over here in article page. So let response equals properties of undefined. Okay, let me go back.
Yeah, I think we're almost there.
We are, it's just a little, one thing was working, but this is not. Okay. So hits was undefined. I'm gonna console log my response real quick to see what expecting or what is coming back. Okay, so here, data hits at 1 or at 0. I mean, this is correct.
Can we look at that object again? Is it data.hits or is it data.data.hits?
No, it's just response.data.hits, but I think there's something with this response when I'm doing fetch article by ID.
I think that your response is actually a promise.
That's what I think so too.
Yeah. So I think you have to do like that then to actually get the response.
Mm-hmm. So here it would be dot then. Okay, so that's, I guess this kind of brings us back to why we had put it in a separate, like, so we put our set articles inside of our Axios call. So that allowed us to actually set the data because we have access to it in here. And this just called it. So that would have probably been better. This is actually, so you see it would be a little difficult here because we have our state in article page and then we have our API call in a different page. So you can't kind of set your state to here. Tomorrow we're going to be learning about a tool called Redux, and that will allow you to give like a global state for your entire app. So yeah, we'll talk about that one tomorrow, but I'm still trying to get my response or my hits correctly. So it is returning a promise.
So where are we doing the dot then?
Over here.
in
So-
article page.
Yeah. So dot then I am going to grab a response. And then here I can do the response data. Okay.
Nice.
Let's hope it works. Oh, good. Now it's working. So yeah, it was an async. So it's funny because I did think that, and I know that async functions return response promises, but I was trying to work around not using a dot then, which I could have used await, but it doesn't work outside of an async function. So in this case, I had to use the dot then. I couldn't use await.
Did you get rid of await then?
No, the await is in here. This is still doing await, but I had to put the dot then over there because any async function returns a promise, and we got around it over here because we didn't really need to do anything with what get data returns. So get data was our async function over here, right? We set our state inside of it. So we didn't actually need to get anything back from it. So yeah, so if you return anything from an async function, it is a promise. So you have to handle it properly. I see some hands up. Yeah, John.
So normally we've been seeing async with await, and then like with the Axios call, we use dot then chaining. So dot then and await both handle promises, so we could use them whether we use async or using Axios call. Okay.
So no, so with the Axios, you can use either a dot then or an await. So async and await work together. If you want to use await, you have to have it inside of an async function. You can get around this by not using either of them and then just using axios.get. And then at the end, you would say dot then do something.
Okay, it's because we use Axios, then we're using dot then there. Is that
No,
right?
so with Axios, you can use either.
Okay.
Here,
But
yeah. So
with
Axios,
async, you have to use await.
exactly.
Okay.
If you want to use await, you have to use async. And yeah, so it's just two different ways of handling a promise. And our Axios function returns a promise. Our async function also returns a promise. So that's why when I was returning something from here, it wasn't working. But I do think if I return, sorry, not from here, from my articles API, I do think if I do response dot no, is it result? No. I don't know. I'll work on this, and if I find something that would make it work, I'll let you guys know. Instead of putting the dot then in this over here. Yeah, Justin.
Can you humor me for a second and kill your run dev and refresh your page so it goes to a non, yeah, and then go back and run it and then load your page for me.
Yep.
What's on your mind, Justin?
Load the home page.
The home page.
Yeah. I've been struggling with a problem on my end where when I load it up initially, it's not rendering the article data. I think it's trying to load the articles based on the empty array I have, and then it'll get the data, but it's not re-rendering the home page to show that data. I put in a use effect, but I'm not really sure why. Like if I put an empty use effect that has the condition as a variable, will it reload the whole component upon that variable changing? Or will it only run the functions inside the use effect?
I think it'll only run, actually, I don't know. Do you
On your-
know offhand, but by any chance, Adam or Raphael?
Say that question one more time, Justin. I sort of understood, but I want to make sure.
If you make a use effect, right, like she has a use effect with the article ID as the catalyst. If you have nothing inside of it, there's no fetch article function if it's just empty. If that component, or if that catalyst changes, will the use effect cause the whole component to refresh and re-render?
Okay, so in that list or array, Zainab, can you mute for a moment?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I forgot.
No, no worries. I know it's annoying. So in that array in use effect, we're telling use effect what values to watch for.
To trigger,
And
yeah.
Yeah, and if that value changes to re-render, if that array is empty, use effect will be called once, I believe, when the component is mounted. If props change, it might be called again. I'm not sure. It's a common pattern to leave that array empty. But then, but if there's something that you want use effect to be called on when that thing changes, you've got to put it in the array. I think it'll be easier if just, I think it will be easier to look at code, to be honest. I think that's going to be way easier to address the issue that you're raising.
So
I think the issue I'm personally having on my end is if I load up the page, my articles aren't re-rendering after I change or after I receive the API data, right? So originally my articles are empty, just like yours, but then it loads the API data and it's not forcing a re-render after that. And I'm not sure why not, because I've put in things. So I'm curious where you are doing that.
So you
Where are
use
you
set
making-
articles for sure, or like set whatever
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
So right now I just tested out the thing that you asked. If I have an empty one
Empty,
here, and yeah, so it didn't re-render. It stayed open even though I changed my article ID. So
Right.
it stays the same until because this has no condition.
On
but-
your app.jsx, what are you rendering at the bottom?
I'm rendering my pages, the routes.
Your routes, and you're handing them the articles. Okay.
Yeah.
So ideally,
because
when
the
those articles
are in there,
change,
Yeah.
it should re-render. So ideally in homepage and article page and section page, you would have the use effect there saying, hey, if articles changes, re-render
Yeah.
the stuff.
So I could do.
So I have one on my homepage.
This could be like an experiment. So
It's just weird.
So if I'm gonna check if it will, or you can do this actually too. So to
Yeah.
see like,
I can already see it.
yeah. So this will get my data, every five seconds. If I go back to my homepage for this and then count to 5, and then it should populate some more. I think I don't know, I did something wrong, but yeah,
That's
you can
okay.
play around with this and
Set
see.
interval is also an embedded function, just like use effect, I think, but
Oh,
don't worry
okay.
about it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I don't want to hold everyone up, so go ahead and keep going.
Yeah, Dalton.
So I'm getting a cannot read properties of undefined reading data. And like it looks exactly the same as yours, so I'm not really sure why.
Where? In
It
which function?
says on article page J6.
Article page.
This says line 15. So
Set articles. Did you do the dot then part?
yeah, so I have
yeah.
dot then response, console log response, set article response dot dat. It looks exactly the same.
Check if you're actually returning the response in Articles API.
Yeah, in the fetch here, you have to return the response back.
On what? Oh, okay, so and that, okay, cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, no? All right.